Osalaman TV ahwefo me mo bibia akwa ababiem na ba Osalaman TV so. Me am na make say the first time we share me am din ankasa the George Asare. Me mo me din obi a the friend me am just Osalaman teacher and no obi a the friend me am just so. Now in the previous video that I did, we were able to complete the sources of writing African history. That is when we were able to complete the oral traditions, archaeology, linguistics, numismatics, and the rest. But today, we are moving forward to another important basic principles in studying history, which is known as periodization in history. You see, history is much more difficult when you don't understand the period within which we are studying. And that is why we are going to take step-by-step approach in this video to understand the concept of periodization in history. If there is more time, we will also start with the dating systems of studying in history. You see, history has been divided into various dates so that it will direct our focus on the specific time within which a particular incident occurred in the past. So historians have created a dating system that they rely on to write about the past. But firstly, let's talk about periodization in history. Periodization simply talks about the processes that historians go through to divide history into distinct periods based on significant events of the past. You see, the history of the world is a very long one. The earth itself is about 4.5 billion years old. The evolution of mankind started around 1 million years before the birth of Christ, up to about 500 years before the birth of Christ. So you see, the history of the world is a very broad one, and that is why it is very important for historians to divide the world into distinct periods by considering certain significant events in order to understand or in order to analyze certain issues about the past. So that is what periodization simply is about. Why is it that periodization is important? It is important because it helps historians to direct their focus on what to study. It helps historians to form good analysis about the past in order to give them to the society to learn. That is why periodization is very important in studying history. So let me take you through some periodizations that historians have established in the field of studying history. You see, from the beginning of the evolution of mankind, historians have taken a certain time period, and after studying that particular time period, they realized that the most dominant socio-economic activity of mankind was the use of stone tools in the making of the lives of mankind easier in their society. Mankind used stone tools so that it will help them to adapt in the kind of environment within which they live. And in order to have an effective organization of historical analysis, they called that particular period the Stone Age period. See, that period studies the evolution of mankind, how man evolved from primitive ape-like creatures into what we now have as Homo sapiens. The way mankind used these tools to adapt in their society. That is what that period studies. There is a period that historians refer to as the ancient period. Now, the ancient period studies old civilizations of the world. the ancient period studies ancient societies that are very, very, very old, like the Sumerian societies, like the ancient Egyptian societies. These are ancient civilizations whose achievements have effectively impacted the lives of mankind even today. So in order to study this period, historians periodize that particular time as the ancient period. And it is about 4,500 years even before Jesus Christ was born. And that is why it is important to periodize history into distinct periods. You see, we had Stone Age period. There is also another period known as the Ancient period. There is a period in European history known as the Renaissance, characterized by the significant advancement in the field of science. That is when mankind started using scientific processes, scientific methodology, scientific inquiry in understanding our society. So within this period, people like Isaac Newton, you see, intelligent people like Isaac Newton, a certain man called Galileo, they all evolved within that period. And it is as a result of their discoveries that various scientific principles were established within that period. Within that period, the printing press was invented. You see, as knowledge was booming, there was the need for the printing of this knowledge so that it can reach a vast majority of people in the world and across Europe. So the printing press was also invented within that Renaissance period. You see, it is the period that Europeans started to practicalize science. When you say you are practicalizing science, the principles within science that we always study. You see, when you study science, we have the law of flotation. Every day we go to SHS, we go to the university to study the law of flotation and the law of this. But what can we do with these particular laws? Within the 14th and the 17th century, which is referred to as the Renaissance period, Europeans were able to invent certain technological implements by using all these scientific principles. You see the compass that is used in the navigation of the sea, the compass that has been invented in ships, which its modernized form are used in ships in our current times. That was when it was invented, the Renaissance period. Now, the reasons why it is very important to periodize a certain period in history is that it will be able to tell you that, yes, at this particular point in time, these were the order of the day. And the order of the day impacted the lives of mankind in transitioning the society from one point to another. You see, as a result of the invention of the navigation compass in ships, Europeans were able to discover other areas in the world. And that is how Europeans were able to navigate the Atlantic Sea to come to Africa. So by 1471, the first European ship landed in the shores of Ghana. You see how the Renaissance period affects how the society even interacts with each other. The Europeans were able to navigate the seas to the Americas, to Africa, to discover so many other things. As a result of the scientific revolution, industries were built. Now, when these industries were built, there was the need for raw materials. So you see where the transition is coming from. As a result of the Renaissance period, Europeans were able to manufacture certain important scientific implements, and as a result of that, they started discovering some other lands in the world. They started building industries. Now they have ships that they can use to navigate the sea. So when the industries were built and raw materials were needed, they started exploring other areas of the world. And that is how they started exploring the Americas and then the African continent in search of raw materials. After these raw materials were obtained, they processed them in their factories as finished goods. These finished goods, in order to look for external markets, was also brought back into some other continents like Africa. Now, Europeans started coming to Africa. They were trading in goods, in their finished goods. They were obtaining some materials from the African indigenous population, and they were selling their finished goods to them. Now, at a point in time, even though they came to Africa to trade with us, there was then the interest in ruling. And that was the genesis of colonization in Africa. So you see, the Renaissance period prepared Europe into coming to Africa and then into engaging in colonization. Now, as a result of colonization, you see, the colonization of Africa is also another period. When you talk about periodization in history, colonization in Africa is also another period, which was as a result of the Renaissance period development. You see, now, during the colonial period, certain Africans started to agitate against the colonial government in Africa. When colonization started, some Africans who had their indigenous society at heart started agitating for the freedom of their countries. You see, the colonial economy was such that they wanted to exploit the raw materials of the African continent to feed their industries, and they had no intentions of developing these colonies. So in order to fight for the well-being of the indigenous population, some Ghanaians who had the country at heart during that time, the Gold Coast time, some indigenous Gold Coasters that had the country at heart started fighting against the colonial government. As a result of colonization, nationalism became a common subject across Africa. And as a result of nationalism, Africans were able to capture their own power, were able to gain their independence from these Europeans that has come to their countries. So that is what periodization is about. It studies how historians have divided history into distinct periods so that we can be able to have a strong form of organizing our thoughts in history. So that is the end of part 1 of today's discussion.